I'm your host, Aaron, and today I'm joined by Christian Espinoza. Welcome to the show, Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I'm happy to be here today.
It's my pleasure to have you on. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please?
I'm an entrepreneur. I've built one company and sold it in 2020, a cybersecurity company. I'm currently building a second cybersecurity company that focuses on medical device cybersecurity. So we make sure a pacemaker or defibrillator can't be hacked into, a surgical robot, a diagnostic machine. So any kind of medical technology. Um, Before that, I'm a veteran. I used to be in the U.S. Air Force. I've done 24 Ironman triathlons, climbed a couple of the seven summits, and pretty much if there's a waiver involved, like meaning you could lose your arm or possibly die, I'm attracted to that kind of activity.
Yeah, that's brutal. Ironman's brutal, right? Just refresh my memory. So there's a marathon, right? That you have to run. How far's the swim?
The swim is 2.4 miles, and then a 112-mile bike, and then a 26.2 mile run.
That's grim, you know.
It's a long day.
That takes some doing that, and it's pe- like people look at that and go, "All right, that's a tough day. You do all that, but it's all the training that goes into it as well, right? All the miles you have to put in training in the lead up to it. That's big commitment. That
Yeah, it's like generally between 10 and 20 hours a week. I mean, if you do 10, the race is going to hurt. I've trained with doing like 10 hours a week because I've been super busy and the race was very painful. The more training you do, the easier the race, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just oh, I've always wanted to do one, but it's just dedicating that time to do it. It's because if you don't, there's a cut off as well, right? There's a time limit cut off for Ironman.
Yeah,
Is
the
that right?
maximum time is 17 hours. So it starts at generally 7 in the morning and you have until midnight.
Wow, that's brutal. Imagine training up for it and doing all the prep and then just not being able to finish it. That'd be brutal.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure it
mean,
happens to lots of
that
people though.
happens
Because
to a
it's
fair number of people. I've finished every one I've started, so I've been fortunate. Despite having mechanicals on the bike and throwing up on the run and all kinds of challenges, but that's part of the journey.
yeah, man. It takes some doing. Did you used to do smaller triathlons before that? Is is that what you used to do, or did you just kind of fancy it one day and just think I'm going to go for this?
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine, a super big smack talker, super competitive, invited me to a triathlon. That was in the early 2000s. I didn't know what a triathlon was. It was a what's called an Olympic distance, like a 400-yard swim, like a 22-mile bike and 10K run. And I had to borrow a bike. I had to learn how to swim, and I ended up beating him because I didn't want him to keep talking smack. So after that, it kind of gave me a purpose for my training, and I just sort of over time upped the distance until I hit the Ironman. But there's not a real easy transition from like a half Ironman to a full. There's nothing in the middle, so you got to go from a half to a full, which is a pretty big jump.
Yeah, that's huge actually. That's just doubling the distance just to go for it. Um, but yeah, that seems quite bad. But maybe one day I'll build up the nerve to give it a whirl. But you said you were in the Air Force as well, Christian. What did you do in the Air Force?
I did communication, so I made sure classified data or secret data was kept secret from nation state actors. So a
Okay,
little bit of cybersecurity back in the day.
that's what I'm gonna say. So that kind of feeds into what you're doing now, I suppose.
Yeah, that was I guess the beginning. I when I got out of the military, that was in 1999, so quite some time ago. I knew that cybersecurity was going to become a big deal, so I decided to focus my career on that.
Yeah. So and obviously you said you started a company and sold it on. What did that company do? Is that the same sort of stuff that you're doing now, or is it slightly different?
It's slightly different. We did cybersecurity, but we did a lot of different facets of cybersecurity. We did training, we did what's called penetration testing or ethical hacking. We did a little bit of med tech cybersecurity, making sure medical devices are secure, and a few other things, some audits. So that company was kind of my learning ground. I'm still learning. Obviously, I'll never be done learning, but I try to sell cybersecurity to everybody. which ultimately diluted my message and didn't really wasn't effective selling to hardly anybody. So this company now that I'm running, Blue Goat Cyber, I'm focused purely on med tech, cybersecurity, and if it wasn't for a medical device, I wouldn't be here. About 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with 6 blood clots and almost didn't make it. So thanks for a medical device. I'm here, and I feel like maybe that was the universe telling me this is what this company should focus on and leverage the experience from the first company.
I like that. I like that a lot. Um, so what is the medical device, if you don't mind me asking, that kind of saved you then with the blood clots?
Yeah, it's a portable Doppler ultrasound. So it's a device that was able to identify the clots. I had 6 of them in my left leg. So it was a pretty severe case of blood clots. I literally just done like 120 burpees the day before. So I didn't think people that are athletic would ever get blood clots, but I had 6. And if that device was recalled because somebody hacked into it, or if it gave a misdiagnosis, then like I said, I may not be here.
Yeah, and I suppose you've always been kind of fit and healthy if you're doing all these kind of runs and Ironmans and stuff like that. And obviously, there's a mental toughness that comes with that. And did that kind of help you as well with that kind of diagnosis and that fear, I suppose, that you get with that kind of thing? Because no matter how fit we keep ourselves, some things are out of our control, right?
Yeah, I think in life it's important to be resilient and resourceful. I think doing Ironman, triathlon, or climbing mountains, or some of the things I do, building a business, help make me resilient and resourceful. And I had to be resourceful to get through the blood clots. To recover from that, I decided to stop taking blood thinners, reclaim my health. I got every single blood test done. I did a half Ironman as kind of my comeback race just to prove I was still capable, and just done a lot of IV therapy and things to reclaim my health because I realized nobody cares about your health more than you do. So I wanted to take my health back in my own hands. And once I made that decision to stop taking the blood thinners, it's like everything shifted. It gave me the courage to start a new business, to show up better in my life, show up better with my girlfriend at the time, and it just really helped overall. That just simple decision.
Yeah, and I suppose as well as we age and as we get older, it becomes more and more important, right? Because our quality of life depends on how healthy we are.
Yeah, 100%. And I,
Yeah,
I think
it's
I think a lot of us prescribe to what society tells us that once you get to a certain age, it's your mobility is going to go down. You can't do things anymore. I mean, I've done Ironman triathlon where an 85-year-old has finished the race at a pretty decent time. So I don't think age is a real limitation. I think it's mainly mental.
yeah, and I suppose age does become an issue if you don't look after yourself, if you're not kind of keeping yourself active, because then I think it's hard. When you're younger, you can kind of get to a point and then you can maintain it for a long period of time and keep yourself going into your elder years, really. But I think if you try to start when you're older, it's that much more difficult, right? Because you haven't got that kind of foundation from previous.
I think you can still start when you're older. I think it's a matter of you have to take it slower because your body doesn't recover as quickly. I know a lot of people will try to go run like a mile and their knees hurt, and then they just give up and say, "Oh, my knees are bad." But it's one of those things you have to walk and then jog and walk and kind of build up to it. I think, despite what age you are, I think everyone has that capability to learn a new skill or develop a certain degree of fitness. Maybe not Ironman distant fitness, but I think it's possible for anybody that puts their mind and their soul into it.
Yeah, I do think I genuinely think it's important to keep that kind of to keep physically active, but mentally active as well. I suppose I think that's the problem is when we come kind of get to that point, like you say, society says, "Oh, just slow down, stop doing stuff, kind of relax," and then you just never kind of recover from that. You end up you're going backwards. Then you're kind of just allowing yourself to kind of sit there, not continuing to push yourself. When if you push yourself to do stuff, you'll remain physically more healthy. You'll get more joy from the stuff that you're doing as well. You'll have a better quality of life, and it kind of all all plays a part, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I was just reading about Alzheimer's and dementia, and one of the main preventions is to keep your mind active. And it kind of has the same concept. As we get older, a lot of us don't develop a new hobby. We stop learning things, and then that's when Alzheimer's and dementia start happening because we're not. I mean, our brain is like a muscle too. We're not exercising our brain as much. Just like if we stop walking, we're going to lose our mobility. So I think it's important to continue to learn new skills. I mean, I read about a guy that he thought he was going to get Alzheimer's. There were some indications, but then he started learning like how to play the guitar one month. Then next month he learned how to play chess or whatever. It's just something to keep his mind active.
Yeah, I do think that's important. Wherever it is that people find to keep their mind active, that you do need to do that. And I do think there is a link between physical fitness and mental fitness, because I think, especially this kind of stuff that you're doing, when you're having to push yourself, you are also stretching yourself mentally. You're building that resilience and that tolerance to actually, take on a bit more, to push yourself a little bit harder. And I think that definitely does make you grow mentally as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, to do an Ironman triathlon, it's I would say it's like one third physical, one third mental, and one third nutrition. So you've got to have that mental fortitude and know that things will go wrong, and it's how you respond to those things that can make or break your race. Like I remember being on Ironman Wisconsin, and you're never supposed to try something new during a race, but I decided to try a 5 hour energy like midway through the run, and my body had this weird reaction. So I was literally like flush, like in the fetal position, throwing up on the side of the run course. So I was able to get out of that, but again, that built up mental toughness.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you use any of that? I said, do you use any of it? It's probably a bad way to phrase it, but do you find there's a crossover of that mental toughness and that kind of resilience that you've earned and learned by doing that you bring into your business side of things?
Yeah, 100%. Because just like laying on the side of the road, vomiting, not thinking I can get up and make it, I've been in similar positions in business. My first business, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make payroll, and I was freaking out, kind of like laying on the floor in my basement in the fetal position again, just thinking, what am I going to do here? I'm not sure what to do, and I figured it out. But it's not about giving up in those times. It's about finding the solution, which is where that resourcefulness comes into play, and realizing in life, just like an Ironman triathlon, there's going to be valleys, but if you keep going, you'll make it out of that valley and start climbing the next hill. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, because business can be tough, right? Business can be difficult for people because, and I think that's why a lot of people who try it prefer employment, because it's that kind of steadier, isn't it? Employment, you're guaranteed your kind of paycheck at the end of the month within reason. You kind of know where you stand, what you're going to get. Well, with business, it, it can be up and down. It can be a bit of a roller coaster. That stock market effect, almost, where you kind of one month's a really good month, you bring in a lot of money. The next month's a bit of a down month, and it can be difficult to manage your emotions throughout that, right? And your psychology.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people get into business thinking it's going to be easier than it is. But the reality is it's much harder than working for somebody else. And I like to say you're trading a 9 to 5 for a 5 to 9, basically. And it is going to be challenged. Your destiny is up to you and how you manage your time, how you manage your team, how you manage your clients, what vision you set. So there's a lot of things that are new skills for people to develop. And it's hard to go from a really good operator to a really good business owner because the skills are very different. Just because you're really good at plumbing, as an example, doesn't mean you're going to be good at running a plumbing business. You have to learn the whole business aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different skill set completely. In it, managing people for a start, you got running the books and the accounting. You got the marketing to get the work in. It's completely different than the actual skill set of just delivering the plumbing element.
100%. Yeah, and
Do you,
all those are skills I had to learn because I thought, like I said, with my first business, I'll just sell cybersecurity. Everybody needs cybersecurity. I didn't know marketing. I didn't know sales. I didn't have a process. And it was very painful, kind of like that Ironman. I had to pivot. I had to learn things on the fly. I paid a lot of what they call the dumb tax. I invested a lot of my money and lost it in the business at first until I started figuring these things out.
How did you figure it out, Christian? Was it just trial and error? Did you kind of teach yourself? Did you kind of lean on other people, or how did you kind of learn these different elements that you needed to kind of put together to piece a successful business?
I would say there's three main ways. One, I joined a peer group with fellow entrepreneurs and CEOs. So I learned from the people in that group. I learned by listening to a lot of books on Audible, like Donald Miller's brand script on marketing, for instance, or story brand framework. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos on marketing, on sales, on different tools to use for those. So it's really putting in the time is how I learned it.
Yeah, and sometimes there's no way around that, right? Because I had a conversation the other day with a guest who's got a podcast as well, and no matter all the theory in the world, you only learn by putting things into practice, really, and making the mistakes, and ultimately that's what you have to do. You have to pay your dues, really.
Yeah, 100%. I think you can read all the books you want, listen to all the advice you want, watch all the YouTube videos you want, but until you do it and make the adjustments, it's not going to really matter. It won't. At least for me, it doesn't sink in. And I have to have the ability to pivot because there's all these gurus out there that tell you, how to make $10,000 a month by setting up a website and a shopping cart and all this stuff. And the reality is that it rarely works that way. It may work like one out of 1,000 times, but a lot of people get sucked into that. And I think that's why they lose hope and confidence running a business or starting a business.
Yeah, and it makes me laugh a lot of these people who kind of sell these things online, saying, "Oh, you can do this. You can make 10,000 a month, and I'll show you how." If it was that easy, they'd just open multiple stores, wouldn't they, with making 10,000 a month, and they would do it themselves and pocket that money. They are making their money by selling them courses, which is smart, but it's infuriating for the people who kind of fall for it and then get upset by it, I suppose.
100%. I mean, you got to become your own guru. You can listen to other people, but at the end of the day, it's your decisions that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And on this journey, especially with your first business, obviously you learned along the way. What are some of what's probably the biggest lesson that you learned starting that first business that you've kind of employed into this business now to make it better and more robust and to be more efficient, I suppose?
I would say there's three main lessons. The first one is about marketing and messaging and understanding your ideal client profile and how to speak to them in a way that resonates. I think that's the first thing I learned. I did towards the end of my business, the one I sold, start applying the brand script format, which positions you as the business as a guide and the client as the hero or the prospect as the hero. A lot of businesses do the opposite. They just brag about how great they are and don't really address how they're going to solve a prospect's problem. So that was one of the things, the messaging. The second is my team. I didn't have core values. I thought they were kind of bogus because core values like integrity. I mean, everybody should have integrity, but I established core values in my company and I had to rate people on those core values because I realized like 99.9% of the problems I have in my company were because my staff didn't share the same core values or did not have cultural fit or did not have the right emotional intelligence. So then when I established all that, I had to enforce the core values, which meant letting some people go. And I made hiring decisions based on core value alignment. So before, I would make hiring decisions on how great somebody was technically, their certifications, their credentials. And I changed all that and looked at their core value alignment first. And then only if they passed those, they look at their technical skills. And then the third thing I would say is I sold my business for stock to a publicly traded company. And while I was working for that company, I could never sell my stock. When I finally left, the stock was like at $5 and it quickly went down to 8 cents. So, so and I can only sell so many shares a day. So I'm definitely not going to do that again.
Yeah,
It's
that's
very
not.
painful to
Yeah,
think you
man,
have
that's
this
not.
much money and it just evaporates on the way down.
That's the problem with the stock market, right? I mean, it's great, but if when it comes to taking money out, if the timing is wrong, then it's it's bad times, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, I feel for you. But yeah, it's interesting what you say about the core value stuff, and I think that's really important is having people who are the right fit. I mean, you can learn how to do the job and the skills, but your kind of core values are kind of who you are, right? And this kind of what you believe in, and it's going to be difficult to kind of get on in a place if if your core values are clashing with the core values of your staff.
Yeah, and I wrote a book about the core values and what I did to change the culture called The Smartest Person in the Room. And it's interesting because I had a team member on my team that wanted to be a leader in the company. And I told him what skills and what emotional intelligence he needed to develop. And he was super resistant to it. He said, "So you're asking me to change who I am?" I said, yes. In order to be a leader in the company, who you are is not the right person for that role. So yes, you have to change who you are. And he ended up leaving the company because that was too much for him to swallow.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's better to do it that way than try and make it fit, right? And when it doesn't, because he might find somewhere where his core values do fit and he fits perfectly well in somewhere else,
Hmm.
and you might find the right person to fit that role that you need. So I think it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, isn't it? Really, but it can be difficult in the short term, especially when you've got people on board already and you're trying to enforce it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's necessary, and that's something I had to shift because I realize it's better for both of us. There's too much friction if I have somebody on my team that doesn't align. So it's better if they're in a different role, and it's better for me. And as a leader of my company, my my teammates expect me to make these sort of decisions because if I try to set a culture but don't enforce it, people look at me like, does this culture actually matter? Because we have a bad apple on the team that doesn't align, and Christian's not doing anything about it. So I have to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, it's what you tolerate is the kind of culture that you'll have, right? If you know, it just if you just put a poster on the wall saying this is the core values and you don't follow through, then people will just ignore it because you're ignoring it. But if you're kind of following through with it and you're championing it yourself and rewarding people who are championing it, then it'll grow and take on a life of its own and it'll become its whole thing then.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a believer that you get what you tolerate in life. So if you're tolerating certain things and your life is not working out, it may be time to stop tolerating those things, which could be something as simple as getting up earlier to work out or going for a walk or leaving a relationship. So you get what you tolerate. So I think it's important to find out what you want to tolerate and where your boundaries are, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think, by doing that as well, because if we don't do that, then we're just going to make ourselves unhappy, aren't we? We're going to feel let down and upset at things and aggrieved at stuff because we're allowing people to treat us in a particular way. Um, we might have a boundary, but if we've not honored it, then it's just going to make us feel worse. It's not really a boundary if you're not honoring it, is it? It's just it's just talk at that point.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you said, if we're not willing to set the boundaries and enforce them, we're probably not going to feel congruent in our life and happy, and feel like we're making progress. And setting boundaries and knowing what you want to tolerate it's a difficult thing because you at least for me, I have I used to have the perception that if I only want to hang out around these sort of people, then these other people might be judging me that I think I'm better than them or something. So a lot of it's like this self doubt and this perception you think other people may have of you. But to get to a different level, I need to hang around a different peer group. And it doesn't mean I don't like this previous peer group. It's just I've decided I need to have a boundary and spend more time with this new peer group where I can learn from and we can collaborate and I feel empowered by and inspired by, as an example.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to as well the people we surround ourselves with are the people that we become similar to, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And if we surround ourselves with people who are not behaving in ways we want to behave, or they're not, you know, doing the things that we want to do or learn or achieve, then we're just selling ourselves short, and we're going to be probably be okay in the short term, and you can make it kind of work in the short term. You can placate people, and you can just kind of tread water where you are. But if you want to progress and move on, then you've got to make those big choices and big decisions. And unfortunately, sometimes that does mean leaving people behind. And you shouldn't be ashamed of that, because everybody's on a different journey, and you've got to follow your journey, right?
100%. And that's where understanding where you want to go and have clarity around that is important. And I always think of what Jim Rohn said. He's one of the older original personal development people. He said that you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with. And I think that is very true. And if you look around in your life today and look at the 5 people you hang around with, you're probably very similar to them, health wise, wealth wise, and relationship wise. So you might want to find a different group to hang around with if you want to increase your health, your wealth, or your relationship, to a better one.
Yeah, and that's arguably that's easier than ever now as well, with the internet and online. You can meet people in an online space, and even though it might not be the same because they might be on a different part of the world, you can have conversations, and you build relationships, and learn and bounce off each other, over the internet in lots of different ways. It can be video chats like this. It can be messaging. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of drawn to communities now, and they join communities of like-minded people, because that really kind of helps drive them forward.
Yeah, I am part of a couple different masterminds where I try to surround myself by people that are doing better than me in certain areas so I can learn from them. But I also want to be cognizant that I want to I want to be able to sorry, contribute to the group as well.
Yeah, I don't. I think everybody can contribute, even if you're at, even if you're at the bottom of whatever group that you join. I think sometimes, even by just asking certain questions that the rest of the members may not have thought about, you can contribute in that way, where you kind of get people thinking in a different way. So there's always ways that you can contribute, I suppose. So I don't think people should be put off by feeling the need that, oh, I need to be able to offer something. Sometimes what you offer is that curiosity, that kind of challenging the normal way of thinking, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Being curious and asking the right the right question to find out what's the decision process or the thought process behind what somebody does. And I'm a believer that if you ask a better question, you'll get a better answer. And I've done a lot of coaching as well, and it's really about the quality of your questions. If you can change somebody's life or make the light bulb go off of why they're doing something that they don't want to be doing, or why their relationship they don't want to be in, or why their health isn't where it should be, or their wealth. It's really about asking the right questions. I believe as a coach, it's about the questions. It's not you don't provide the advice or the answers. You ask the right questions, which opens up the person's mind to a better answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think people are different as well, right? So lots of people respond to different things in different ways. So these different questions will make people think about things in different ways. They've got different backgrounds and stuff that might trigger different things. Because I've done some coaching previously, and it's for me, it's always about that self discovery for that person. You're guiding them to discover it themselves.
Hmm.
Because if you do that, it's so much more powerful as well, because they have this self belief that's building along with it. It's not just I'm telling you something. I could tell you an answer, but there's you look at the successful business people out there, they've all done it differently. They're all built differently. There's no for all these online courses that are out there. There's no cookie cutter way to grow a business and be successful. So giving somebody the answer, saying this is what to do, isn't the best way. They need to find what works for them and how to deliver it, and that's the same in all walks of life, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We're all unique and authentic, and just because it works for somebody else a certain way doesn't mean it'll work for you. So I agree 100% that we can take the advice of other people and take coaching, but ultimately, if you're not a 5 a.m. in the morning person, but the guru is telling you have to get up at 5 a.m., that may not work for you. So maybe you stay up later or do something different. If you don't like cold showers, it doesn't mean you have to take cold showers. I mean, everyone's got a routine that works for them, but it's not a cookie cutter recipe that works for everybody.
Absolutely, and I think it is about that. It's about finding what works for you, what works for your life, and how you can best maximize your skills, your abilities, and get the most out of yourself as a person, really.
Yeah, 100%. And I fell into the not really trap, but I of the morning routine of people, and I would get up at 4:30, take a cold shower, meditate, and do all the things I saw you talk about on one of your videos. And it worked for a while, but then I realized, this is really not me, and I can be successful if I don't do these things. So I had to like be okay not doing them, because for a while I thought this is what successful people do. They all get up at 4:30, they all take cold showers, they all meditate, they all write down in a 5-minute journal the gratitude for the day, their goals, their big rocks. And I just realized that there's some validity in that, certainly, but it doesn't have to be something I follow to a T. I can have my own routine that's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fine if that is people's genuine routine. I think my issue is when people try and shove the routine down people's throats and go, "This is what you have to do," because I just don't believe the world is that black and white. I think there's grey areas, there's complexity to life, and people have to work through things. I think the one thing that these morning routines that people push do have in common is discipline, really. But you
Yeah.
can be disciplined in different ways, and you don't need to get up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., have a cold shower to be disciplined. You can be disciplined without doing that. So it's it is important to have discipline in what you're doing, otherwise you'll never get anywhere. But equally, you got to find a way that works for your life and you as a person.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I don't take cold showers that much anymore. I do every now and then, but there for a while I decided to take a cold shower like every shower. So, and I remember being in like St. Louis in the winter. It's like the water's like just like 1 degree above freezing. But I convinced myself this is what successful people do. We only take cold showers. So the morning was a cold shower, and after I worked out, it was another cold shower, and it was so cold it would like give me a headache half the time.
Yeah, to be fair, you probably do a lot of swimming. And do you do any open water swimming for your Ironman stuff?
Yeah, because all the Ironmans, the races are in open water, so I would practice open water swimming, but I would wear a wetsuit also.
Oh, okay, I was going to say because you're getting plenty of cold plunge doing that anyway.
That's true. Yes, I've done a couple Ironmans. One in St. George, Utah, where I think the water was 42 or 46 degrees, and my ears were like frozen, my nose was frozen, my hands were numb, and my feet were numb when I tried to get on the bike. It was super cold. That's with a wetsuit on. Just all the exposed parts of my body were like numb because it's so cold.
Yeah, I'd have to go somewhere hot to do, and like Hawaii or something like that. Me, I can't do it. Can't do it anyway cold.
Hawaii is awesome. I did the race in Hawaii, and like during the swim course, you're like looking at turtles and stuff below you and coral. It's beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah, I bet.
and
I
the
bet
water
it's
temperature is perfect temperature.
yeah. Well, not so much for the running, I suppose.
Not so much for what?
For the running,
No, the running is pretty hot. That's one of the hottest
yeah.
races I did.
I bet. Is it quite hilly there as well, or is it relatively flat?
It's a little bit hilly. The bike course is pretty hilly because you go from Kailua Kona up to Hawi. It's a big climb, and then the run course has some hills as well. But it's not the hilliest course I've done. I think um, Lake Tahoe might be the hilliest course I've done with some of the bigger hills. Yeah, that's the other thing. Every Ironman's a little bit different. Some courses are flat, some are windy, some are very hilly. and they all take different training.
Yeah, I bet they're all a challenge in their own way, on top of just the challenge that the distance offers. Um, so apart from being kind of on the side of the road in the fetal position, being sick, is there any kind of crazy things that have happened during your Ironman races?
That's one of the biggest ones. I had two flat tires on a race. My tube actually, the tire itself had a hole in it, so I couldn't replace it a tube. And somebody stopped and gave me a spare tube, and then someone finally stopped and gave me a tire as like the mechanic. So, and when I was in the fetal position, somebody took the time to stop and help me get up. So it's a race, but it's also a community, and I found that people are very supportive. A lot of people just ran by, but quite a few people stopped to see how they could help me. So that was gave me some faith in humanity, because I think sometimes people just ignore what's going on and they won't help somebody that's in need. I don't know why, but in Ironman, people have made the effort to help me when I needed it.
I like that, Christian, and you're definitely right. I think a lot of people are so enthralled in their own stuff
Hmm.
that they just don't look around to help other people, and they just blinkered on what their own issues are, what they're doing themselves. And a lot of the times, in my opinion, helping people can actually help you and give you a bit of perspective on life as well.
Yeah, 100%. At that Lake Tahoe race, the first year I tried to do it, there was a bunch of fires and the smoke was pretty bad, so they canceled the race like right before the swim. But the next year I did it. I had got a slot to Kona, the World Championship, so I wasn't like intending to go super fast in the race. I'm not that fast anyway. But there was a woman. It was her first one struggling, and I could tell she was struggling. So I walked with her and ended up kind of keeping her company, and so she could finish her first race. So I repaid the favor, and she thanked me afterwards. Sent me a mess, found me on LinkedIn, and sent me a message, said that she probably wouldn't have finished if it wasn't for me. So yeah, it just felt good to give back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like I say, we've discussed it already, how it's a challenge, and anybody who sets out at the start line to do that race, to take that challenge on, has my respect, because they've got to that point initially anyway through doing their training, etc. But just to have the mental fortitude and the desire to push themselves that hard through something like that, I mean, that deserves respect every day of the week.
Yeah, 100%. A couple other things that happened. I live in Arizona now. I can see the swim course. It was my fastest time, but I was so focused on getting my fastest time that I always like transition to my bike gear, like outside of the changing tent, because I have my bike gear on under my wetsuit. But you have to run through the changing tent to get to your bike. So for some reason, I found myself in the women's changing tent because I was just so focused on getting to my bike. And I looked around, I was like, man, this is the wrong tent. It's all women in here. So I had to turn around and run back out, then go through the men's changing tent. It wasn't like intentional. It was just like I was super focused on having as fast a time as I could possibly get in that race.
Yeah, does it become a bit chaotic in the transitions?
100% chaotic. And that's why I try to avoid going into a changing tent if I can, because given my swim time, which is like an hour and 10 or hour and 20 minutes, it's like a busy time in there. And people are, you got your bag for your bike stuff, and people's stuff is strewn all over. Some people are standing up, some people are sitting down, some people are eating something, drinking something, and sometimes there's no seats to sit on. So I just prefer to try to do it outside that tent as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you got another one coming up soon?
I have not signed up for another one yet. I was walking yesterday thinking about signing up for another one, but I haven't committed. I've kind of not really retired, but I've been focused on my business. But yesterday I was thinking I need to put something on the calendar, like a race, to force me to not use my business as an excuse to not train. And I think that's what Ironman did for me. You can't finish an Ironman unless you train for it. So by putting a race on the calendar and knowing that I want to finish the race, it forces you into a routine. At least for me, when there's a race on the calendar, and I'm spending a fair amount of money because they're expensive to go to, and I'm going with friends, then I better show up. Uh, when there's not a race on the calendar, it's easier to fall off your training, at least for me. When I'm traveling like to Dubai, or I was in California last week, I didn't train, but I trained before I went to Dubai. But if I had a race on the calendar, I probably would have trained while I was in Dubai or in California, despite how tired or jet lagged I was.
Yeah, I think that's the same for me. I think as well with my training. So I train. I've always trained, and then when I stopped playing sport, and if you don't have something to train for, it becomes you just kind of go through the motions and you let yourself off the hook a little bit, don't you? You take a day off here, or even when you go to the gym, you don't quite push yourself quite as hard, and you just kind of just take your foot off the gas. Whereas if you've got something to train for, it really kind of focuses your mind to keep pushing because you've got a target, you've got an objective, you've got something that you're trying to achieve. So I completely get that.
Yeah. Plus, I've done some Ironmans with minimal training, and I finished them, but they were super painful. So it's one of those things like you need to train more so it doesn't hurt as much on the bike or the run, typically.
I bet, yeah, yeah. I can imagine. I mean, I think the longest I've done just run. I've not done a triathlon. I'm not the best swimmer. I can swim fine, but I'd be slow. I'm a slow swimmer. Um, I've I've cycled. I've gone London to Paris cycling. So I've done that. So I'm okay on a bike. I can manage on a bike and running. I'm okay. I've done kind of 18 miles running, but
Okay.
um, not for a while. I haven't done any kind of cardio stuff for a long time now. But putting it all together as well is that's it just blows my mind. I couldn't even at this point I can't even imagine it, but I'll give it a whirl because the amount of training that you have to put in and hours. How many hours a week were you training when you come up to an Ironman? When you kind of come in into the business end where you're putting the big miles in?
Yeah, it's like 15, a little over 15 hours because you've got to get like a long bike ride in on a Saturday or Sunday, which is typically 4 to 5 hours or 4 to 6 hours. So that takes up a big time right there. And then a long run in, it's a few hours. The swims don't take as much time, but you have to do the long bike and the long runs to build your endurance up and your like on your bike. If you don't ride your bike long distance, your butt will hurt severely. Your feet will hurt severely if you don't get used to running a long distance, even though you could possibly walk the marathon. So it's just putting that time in for sure.
Yeah, and I imagine finding that time is hard with your business because how many hours are you putting in on your business? Is that a lot? I imagine.
um, I don't know, probably like 100. I was at an event last week in California, and from 7 in the morning, a little maybe like 6:30 in the morning until like 11:30 or 11 p.m. every day. That was networking and speaking and having a booth, and then typically I start work around 5:30 or 6 and take a little break, but don't finish until like 9 sometimes. So yeah, quite a bit. I'm trying to become the market leader this year, and that requires some effort. But I'm also trying to not kill myself in the process, and have that balance and realize that if I don't have the energy, I can't take the business to where it needs to be. So I need to manage my energy and be cognizant about what's draining my energy, what's distracting me, and keep focused on the big domino. Because if I can knock that one down, everything else will be easier.
Yeah, and I suppose it's getting that balance right is difficult, right? Because you don't want to burn out. You want to keep the keep the needle moving forward and keep moving in the right direction. Keep pushing and producing. But at a certain point, if you do too much, you'll just be kind of going through the motions and just not actually pushing anything forward. The old 80-20 rule comes to mind.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. The 80/20 rule. And I think about that all the time, like what I should be spending my time on and what I can delegate to somebody and what type of procedure I need to develop in order to delegate it effectively. And then also, the challenge I have is we've got a lot of momentum and I want to keep up the momentum, which requires a lot of energy, but I got to figure out how do I do it smartly? How do I get the right people on my team to help me keep up the momentum? Because it can't primarily be me. It has to be my leadership team and the people that work for them as well.
Absolutely. And how do you go about recruiting then, Christian? Do you look for people to kind of plug skills gaps, or do you look for people who are similar to you, or kind of or is it just role specific and you just only just this is what we need for this role? I'm looking for people who can tick these boxes after the core values, of course, because we've discussed that already.
Right. I have decided what an A player is on my team, and I try to go after A players. There's several things I define an A player as. It's somebody that shows up prepared, regardless, as prepared as possible. Somebody that reflects on what they did and how to get better, and comes up with a way to improve. They're willing to take feedback. Someone that has awareness of a situation and can play right in that situation, can adjust their emotional intelligence or whatever it is on a sales call. And then someone that's a good team player. They're not just out for themselves. Their ego isn't like driving their decisions. So I've really started looking at who meets those criteria, and then do they have the aptitude on top of that to learn the job. And I think as an A player, they naturally have the aptitude because they've demonstrated these things in the past. So like the person I put in charge of my sales is an ex cardiac surgeon who knew nothing about sales, but he reached the pinnacle of his career in heart surgery. So I thought, if he can do that, I'm sure he can figure out sales because he's demonstrated he's an A player, he's a team player. And I just went by those criteria and my gut instinct, and he's like doing phenomenal.
Yeah, I suppose if you're looking to work, with medical companies and medical equipment, having somebody with a medical background is really useful, right?
Yeah, and that's the stretch, right? Having somebody with a sales background may be more useful, but to me, I can teach somebody how to do sales in the way I want them to do it. If they if they're not bringing like this conceived notion of what sales is to the table, and if they've already got the background, like you said, they've been in the operating room, they use these medical devices, they understand where the gaps are. It makes it easier for them to sell these things because they can put themselves in a position of who may be buying them, and they can put themselves in a position of who's creating these devices. So yeah, it's definitely helped, and I've got some positive reinforcement on that because my wife works for my company as well, and ironically, she was a cardiac nurse. So I've got two people with medical background on my team, and at that event in California, it's a med tech event. Everybody's like, "That's amazing! You don't just have like cybersecurity people on your team or sales people on your team. You have these people with a background that really understand the industry." So I think getting that feedback was very rewarding. That I made the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then the other medical professionals can really relate to them as well, right? And ultimately, be it sales, wherever it is in business, it's all about relationships and people, right? Because people buy from people. That's what's happening. It's not just magic that's happening. We have to build these relationships with people. They have to kind of trust that we're trying to do the right thing and we can help them in what we provide. So I think having that really will help underpin everything that you're doing.
Yeah, that's right. People buy from people, and they have to. I mean, people typically buy from people they know, like, and trust. So if I have an MD that has used these devices and understands sales, it's very they're very trustworthy. Plus, like I said, they're an A player for sure.
Absolutely. No, it makes a big difference. So tell me a bit more about your company then, Christian. What's kind of next for your company? You said you want to be the market leader. What does that look like for your company?
The goal is to become the market leader this year, which is keeping up with the momentum I feel like we've gotten. We do a lot of marketing, a lot of brand awareness this year. I have a couple competitors, but I feel like they're not as focused or as hungry as I am. So the goal is to become synonymous. As somebody thinks of med tech or medical device cybersecurity, they automatically think of Blue Goat Cyber, my company. That's the goal. And by a market leader, I mean we have the majority of the market share. We're making the most revenue out of my competitors. And like I said, we're synonymous with medical device cybersecurity. If somebody thinks of medical device cybersecurity, they automatically think of Blue Goat Cyber. That's the goal this year.
Love it.
And then
Are
later,
you
I want to grow the company to a point where if I want to sell it, I can, because I think getting a company to be appealing to investors means you've done the right things for your company, period. Um, but I'm not sure I want to sell it. I definitely won't sell it for stock like I did before.
No, I've learned from that one.
Yeah, that was. I paid a lot of the dumb tax. Unfortunately, I've had to learn the hard way a lot of things.
Yeah, well, hopefully this one will be work out a bit better. Are you just US based, or do you work with international companies as well, Christian?
About 40% of our clients are international, primarily Europe. We have quite a few in the UK, um, France, Spain, people that are in Europe or Canada or Asia that want to bring their device to the US market because we focus on helping a manufacturer get through FDA approval, which is in the United States. We can also do Europe and other regulatory authorities as well. But yeah, it's about 40% international and 60% United States.
Oh, that's cool. Do you travel a lot to Europe, or is it just
Yeah, I travel. This year's too much. I feel like I'm gonna take a trip off my calendar to Berlin because I don't feel like it's gonna have the return on investment. But yeah, I'll be. I was just in Dubai in February. I was in Dubai in December. I was in California last week, and then I'll be in London in September, um, Malta in November, Singapore in June, and London in May, as well as Monaco as well. And those are there's a few other trips too, but those are the ones international.
that's a lot, man? That's a lot. You must must take a lot out of you doing all that.
It does. The last trip to Dubai, we were there for 3.5 days, and it was like 30 hours of travel each direction in a 14-hour time difference. So it's like you basically flip the clock upside down, and 12 a.m. is now 12 p.m. So yeah, that was pretty exhausting. And my wife went with me, and she got sick, and then I got sick. So it took us out for like a week and a half afterwards.
Oh wow, that must be yeah, that must have been rough. That must have been real rough. Um, did you say earlier you wrote a book as well, Christian?
Yeah, I've written 2 books.
Where can
The
people
first,
find them books? Tell us a bit about them, and then tell us where people can find them.
yeah, the first book is called "The Smartest Person in the Room." It's about the problems I have in my first company and how I solve those problems, which are really about developing emotional intelligence for highly rationally intelligent individuals. Because in cybersecurity and high tech industries, people typically get their significance by what they perceive as being smarter than other people. So when your ego is trying to protect this identity you created for yourself by being smarter than other people, you're going to talk over their head. You're not going to collaborate well, and you're not going to develop the emotional intelligence because you value rational intelligence or high IQ. So that's the first book. I came up with 7 steps to address that. The second book is called The In Between: Life in the Micro. It's more of a focused memoir about where I've got things right and where I've got them wrong, and in the context of I've been somebody that gets hyper focused on a macro goal, like an Ironman triathlon or climbing a summit or whatever the goal is, that I would get so hyper focused on this goal and achieving it that I would let things right in front of me, which I call the micro moments, kind of fall apart, or I wouldn't show up with intention. I just had these blinders on. And then I realized when I got to that goal that I was automatically thinking about the next goal. Like it wasn't a very fulfilling. It was like a rat race in my own way, chasing these achievements. So it's about finding that balance. And they can both be found on Amazon and Audible as well, if you like to listen to books on Audible. I had Kaleo Griffith narrate both of them. He's done a couple Tim Ferriss books. I think he did Trump's The Art of the Deal as well. So he's a really good narrator also.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like an audiobook. It's I just stick it on when I'm commuting, and it just makes my life so much easier.
Yeah.
Because by the time I sit down to read, I'm usually shattered, and then I'll end up reading a couple of pages, probably falling asleep. So with an audiobook, I get through more of it in one go.
I agree. I put a couple books on my phone today. I'm going to go for a walk later around the lake, and I just can listen to audiobook and learn something while I'm also getting some exercise in for sure.
Nice, man. Love it. So your company, how can people kind of learn a bit more about your company then? Obviously, we can find your books now on Amazon. Um, I'm quite interested in the the micro moments that you talked about, because I think I'm quite guilty of that myself as well, focusing on something, some big goal somewhere, and then the day to day stuff, you just kind of ignoring it, and then nothing's, you're not giving stuff your attention that as you should. And I'm guilty of that, so I'm definitely going to check that out. How can people find out a bit about your company, about your business now?
Yeah, they can go to my company's website, Blue Goat Cyber. We're also on YouTube, and we have a podcast, and we're pretty active on LinkedIn and most social media as well.
Oh, nice. Tell me about your podcast. Is it hosted by yourself?
It's hosted by my CTO and myself. It's called the Med Device Cyber Podcast. So we talk about cybersecurity challenges in the med tech industry, and we also have partners and guests on to give their view from whatever area of expertise they bring to the table and how they see the industry shifting with cybersecurity. Because for a while, nobody cared about cybersecurity with medical devices, but now it's mandated. So the whole industry has had to pivot, and it's caused a lot of delays in time to market for devices because they forgot about cybersecurity. So it's an interesting time in the industry.
Yeah, cool, man. How do you find podcasting and having a podcast yourself? Do you enjoy that part of it, or is that just something you're doing because it promotes the business and stuff like that? Because it can be tough in itself, right?
I I enjoy doing it. It's also I enjoy doing it more when we have a guest. Sometimes my CTO and I would just have a discussion about a specific topic. But when we have a guest, I feel like we learn a lot about what their perspective is on the industry, and it can be exhausting. We record in blocks of periods of like 2 hours, try to get several episodes in, and we do have a professional producer, which makes it a lot easier. So we just show up and record and figure out the flow, and the producer takes care of cleaning up the video, the audio, and producing like the snippets and the assets, the creative assets to share on social media. And I've
Yeah,
done
that's good.
probably, I don't know, at this point, maybe 120 podcasts as a guest. So I know like how to host because I've been on the opposite side for so long. So it's made that transition a little bit easier. But then it's also, we've released our 14th episode. It's one of those things that you can't get discouraged because it takes some time to gain momentum, and it takes some time to build that awareness, and it takes some time for people to even realize you have a podcast.
Yeah, it's a slow burner, the podcast. If you ask me, it takes a while, but uh, the joy of it and the beauty of it is it's depending on the content you do. But I imagine yours is much like mine, which is evergreen content, really. So
Mhm.
it'll forever be out there, bring people in. I have people, it does grow. It just takes a bit of time, and it kind of snowballs and grows and grows and grows. But um, it's definitely not a quick bang to back. Like on the short form stuff, you can grow really quickly, and it can just be
Right.
pretty exponential. And I've had that experience on TikTok where it's just kind of grown and grown and grown. Whereas the the podcast more of a diesel engine, I would say. It just takes a little while to warm up and get going, but when it does get going, it just kind of creeps forward and keeps plodding along, and just gotta stick with it and get the message out there. And I think the joy is for me, especially. I only have guests on, so having
Right.
guests is brilliant for me because I get to meet new people. I get to learn new things and figure out new ways of thinking about stuff, and it's really I enjoy the experience of just sitting here and having conversations with people. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's a diesel engine. So what we try to do, or we are doing, is we have the long form content, which is a webinar or a podcast, and then we use a tool called Opus Clips to chop all the long form content up into like 30-second snippets. So we're hitting it, from both angles. And I noticed like the shorts or on Instagram, the reels get way more views because I think people's attention spans are less today than like the long form content.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be the way. But then the people who have that genuine, deeper interest will come and they will subscribe. They will kind of
Right.
follow, and you will find them eventually, and it'll happen. It just kind of takes a bit of time.
For sure.
But yeah, but no, it's good to see you doing that. I always like to see people putting podcasts out there and doing their own and stuff. But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I remember when I did my first podcast as a guest, you're super nervous about putting yourself out there, and you think the whole world's going to see it if you mess up. But then, you got 100 views. It's not the whole world or something. And then I thought, when I write my first book, what if people don't like it? But I just have gotten over the people that are going to make a negative comment, because I realize that the people that typically troll you or give negative comments don't do the things you're doing anyway. They don't have their own podcast. They don't have their own book. They're just like trying to tear somebody else down. So I certainly listen to the feedback, but I take it with a grain of salt as well.
Same. It's always the people who are not willing to put themselves out there that criticize the people that are willing to do it, and I don't know why that is, but it seems to be the case. It's a bit sad, really.
Yeah, I wrote about this concept. I used to travel to Ireland a lot, and it's a concept in Ireland called the tall poppy syndrome. And it's basically what we just said. It's like people don't like a poppy that's taller than them, so they try to chop it back down so they don't have to become taller themselves, basically. And I think that's like this human psychology and human nature that happens a lot with people. But I would rather, like we talked about with Jim Rohn, I'd rather surround myself by the poppies that are taller than me, so I can learn how to grow and get better. But I don't think that's the predominant mindset of society.
It's not, and I think, I mean, this is just me spinning my wheels, really. But I think for a lot of it is it shows people their own shortcomings and their own shortfalls, and they feel maybe a bit of jealousy or a bit concerned that somebody else is willing and able to do these things, and they are not.
Right.
Um, so I think they kind of project their own fears and stuff onto other people and try to keep people, especially if you know somebody. So if you think you know somebody, it's people always trying to keep you in that kind of known entity, keep you to be that person that they know you to be because that's safe to them. I think that's just kind of human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's like the mirror turns on the person and they think, well, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. And then also, like you said, for some reason, people don't like it when you become somebody different, when you change. I know, like, people from my high school are like, man, you're way different than you used to be in high school. I'm like, I hope so. It's been like 30 something years since high school. I should be changing. I should become a different person, because to achieve the things I want to do, even like at next level of my business, I still have to become a different person, because what got me to this point won't get me to the next point. But a lot of people, yeah, they just freak out about it. They're uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, strange. I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but yeah, it is it is strange, and you see it, and people try to chop you down and kind of keep you in a place that makes them feel comfortable. Like and it took me a long time to kind of put myself out there and be willing to do it, but now that I am, I don't regret it, and there's no looking back for me. I'm more than happy about it. Um, I think it's making me grow as a person. It's opening my mind up to other things and to meeting people I'd never ever would have met otherwise. So I think it's brilliant, and I will keep doing it regardless of what anybody else thinks.
100%. Should do what works for you, not what works for the people.
Absolutely, man. Christian, it's been fab talking to you today. Before we do kind of go and I bring this to a close, do you have any final messages or thoughts that you want to leave people with?
I think and this is what my next book is about. I think it's important to change your story. I think we often get stuck in this narrative. Like, as example, I've seen people have like 40-year-old marriages that are horrible, but they have the story that says, I'm just someone that doesn't believe in divorce. And I think if the story you tell yourself is not serving you, it's important to figure out how to shift that story to one that does serve you. Because really, our inner narrative affects our life decisions.
Absolutely, and that's really powerful as well. I think we build this character up in our heads, much like other people do, like we were just been talking about. When we build this character up in our heads, we're afraid to veer away from that. But we can make it what we want to make it. We can create that character to be whoever we want it to be, if we just kind of open our mind a bit, really, and are willing to kind of put ourselves out there and to experience different things and just kind of follow where we want to go.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Christian, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And I wish you all the best in the future with your upcoming book and with your business.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Aaron, for having me on.
No worries.
Appreciate it.
Take care, man. Thanks. Bye.
All right.